I love it. I love it. I love it. Right, I've started recording so that at least I won't forget to do that. Okay, so I might just get going. I think there are a couple more people due, but let's get going anyway. So I'll introduce you, Trisha. Trisha, I met, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I bet.
Yeah, coming up. Yeah.
LinkedIn, I think, is where we met. And we struck it up straight away, just totally hit it off. And she's just such a fun character, and I've loved getting to know her. And one of the things that happened during our first part of meeting is that I went onto Trisha's podcast, and Trisha came onto my podcast. So we found out even more about each other. And I went to Bournemouth, which is where Trisha lives. Lovely Bournemouth, which is my hometown. And it was so lovely because I was able to walk along the beach with her, and we had a really nice afternoon, didn't we? So that was
it was before all the trouble kicked off.
It was, yeah. In fact, it was the December before 2020, because I think, or the January even, because I'd had a poorly cold and stuff over the Christmas, hadn't I? And recovered. And then Trisha had one soon after that. We both discussed whether we may have had COVID, but actually since then, Trisha did get COVID.
Yes. The real thing.
The real thing. Yeah, and was very poorly with it, weren't you, Trisha?
Yeah.
And I hope you're fully recovered from that now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that was very sad to hear. So then in between all of that and along that journey, this lady went and wrote a bloody book, which is behind me, this side, The Mystery of the Squashed Self, which is a fabulous title in its own right. But if you've ever followed Trisha, you've watched her videos. She has this wonderful alter ego called Inspector Lewis, which I just love. And she solves cases all along the way. And I think I haven't read her book yet because I'm going to be reading it for the book club. But I think what she does in the book, and she's going to tell us, is she kind of solves cases through the book. So first of all, Trisha, I haven't really prepared any questions, so this is going to be almost like I'm podcasting with you again, but welcome, obviously, to our membership live. Thank you for coming.
A complete pleasure, obviously.
It's very kind of you to have joined us. I'd like to probably find out a bit about past Trisha, because I know about it, but I think it might be relevant to the people who are going to watch and certainly who are joining us tonight. Who were you in your past life, Trisha?
It's funny you've put the question like that, actually, because I've written down on my little notepad here, alter egos, because you mentioned that very phrase, and we'll come back to that because I've been thinking quite a bit about that recently, and I think it's a useful tool, and I think people have very mixed feelings about it, whether it's fake or whether it's a useful tool. So can we unwrap that in a minute? But I think I've been a lot of people, but I would say the most relevant stuff is that I was born in the 50s. Yay.
Which is amazing, because you just look amazing.
We'll just leave it at that then. That's it. Job done.
And there you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Good lighting. And I was, well, this might be something to do with, I was born, I had a pretty comfy childhood, but rather cold. Nothing terrible, but yeah, not a lot of sort of sense of having the sort of unique Trisha-ness really encouraged. So I think what happened was I sort of actually quite quickly started self-squashing from a fairly early age, because I think I was originally quite a kind of feisty, silly, daft, playful, showy-offy in the good way, like, here I am, I'm going to do a dance. Now, I think I was all of those things, but then it somehow didn't get particularly encouraged, got a bit squashed down, as in, don't be a show off. And also I then think I was afraid of letting that out. So as I got to school years, you know, you get the popular gang, don't you? And you get the naughty gang, the popular gang, the sporty gang. I was an overthinker, I now realize, and I was overanalyzing what everybody was thinking, desperately self-conscious. And somehow I didn't feel I fitted in with any of these, which I probably didn't, because after all, none of us are a label, are we? None of us are actually any of these things. It's just that that's kind of how it plays out a bit in the playground and in school. So I think because of the way my brain worked, I kind of all that happened was I just became more and more ridiculously self-conscious and more feeling like I was standing on my own somewhere as an alien. And coupled with that was this kind of slight attachment anxiety thing going on, which is a John Bowlby theory, if anyone wants to look that up, seeing as we're in the learning lab this evening. So yes, his attachment theory is quite interesting, because I think that sort of need to be loved, because it wasn't an obvious thing as I was growing up, haunted me a bit, because I was therefore very easily falling into all the people pleaser traps, dressing to please, being what I thought boys wanted me to be, you know, oh, they like this kind of girl, I'll be that kind of girl. Surprisingly, didn't have very many good relationships. Who'd have thought? And on this went. And so this bit of me that was still in there, the only way it ever came out, well, there were sort of two ways. One was me losing it, getting over emotional, over dramatic, slamming doors, walking out, bursting out into tears, all of that kind of stuff, which didn't do me any good at all. Usually ended up with me feeling worse. The other way, which was much healthier, was being on stage. So somehow that bit of me that was a performer somehow managed to creep up and around and escape some of this squashed self and exist in a certain way. Now, I'm not saying that I was immediately, oh yeah, here I am at home on stage as an actor, but it did somehow feel like a place I could exist. And it was only later that I deconstructed that. Obviously, we say all these things, it sounds very clever, doesn't it? But of course, you deconstruct and have hindsight. So, but I did start acting when I was quite young in sort of little outdoor Shakespeare things. And my first part was as an apparition in Macbeth, quickly followed by one of the fairies in A Midsummer Night's Dream. So it was, you know, yeah. And that was a big thing, but weirdly, I dropped it all when I reached my sort of late teens and went up to London, did jobs that didn't suit me, went around in the cycle of I don't like this, I don't want to be here, I'm going to run away, okay, I'm going to be loved by this boy, oh God, he's turned out to be a complete bastard, you know, all this kind of just rubbish, okay, culminating in me making the most hideous choice in terms of a first husband, which could have actually dragged me down below the point of being able to get back up again, because it was a seriously bad marriage. And I'm very glad to say that I can now look back on it and think, survivor. So in a good way, I sort of, okay, I did climb back up. You know, I married again, but it was a healthy marriage, and I'm still very good friends with that second husband, who is the illustrator of the book. So that shows you that we're very good friends. I had a lovely third child with him, and I'm very grateful for that, because he hasn't got the other father's genes in him, and continued to sort of keep battling my way through to find myself again, I guess. So I ended up going to uni at the age of 48. You know, I sort of, and then ended up setting up this business at the age of 59. So I think you could say that I haven't stopped trying to find that right place. Unfortunately, yeah, I'm as close as I think I can get to it now. That doesn't mean to say I haven't stopped, obviously, learning and evolving and everything else. And it doesn't mean I haven't still got days where I think, oh God, who am I? I'm a mess, because of course I'm human. I'm human.
Well, I think that's it though, isn't it? You are human. And I think all of us are probably sitting here, if they're anything like me, and just resonating with a lot of what you've already said. I think what's really interesting is the actor piece for me, in that what changes when you become an actor that allows you to be something that's maybe even more like who you really are. Which is just fascinating, isn't it?
The whole acting thing is fascinating. And again, I've done a lot of deconstructing and forensics, as I like to say, on this, because I very quickly realized how, I mean, I realized when I set up my business that it was totally relevant to everything that I was about to do in this communication coach business. But I was actually knocked back quite a lot by a couple of early mentors when I was very naive, who more or less said to me, and this might be of interest, they said, "Oh, nobody wants to know about the actor stuff. You're a business owner now." And because I was so vulnerable, if you like, still, I hadn't found my voice. I was actually now further back in many ways, because I had all these kind of self-doubts throwing themselves in my face, because I'd entered a world of business from the world of arts, if you like, more. And I was, oh God, okay, all right, nobody wants to know about the acting thing. But then I was thinking, oh my God, but now I'm going to literally betray my entire being. I'm going to sell my soul. I don't want to do this. I've got to do it. I don't. This was literally like people having a wrestling match in my head.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a little while later where I joined another community, who I'll plug, the You Are the Media community, which was very different from the rather traditional networking I'd been going to, where I suddenly thought, oh my God, this is more like it. It was just a bunch of very ordinary, normal, real people with quirks and everything, and from different sort of setups. And to cut a long story short, I started to release more of my performery self, and then was encouraged by somebody to release it even more. And that was when Investigator Lewis appeared. So at that point, with the hat and the trench coat, on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So that proved that I could bring all of the actor kind of stuff in. So that I'm talking really, I suppose, more about my identity, but in terms of the actual process of that an actor goes through, that is completely transferable to the business world. And I think part of what got me feeling good when I was doing it, because I retook it back up again after this kind of drought period. It saved my life after my disastrous first marriage, because I started it again on an Amdram level, and it was gorgeous, because it was, it was people, and then I went professional, and that sort of began to kind of grow my confidence more. But I think it was the fact that I was working on something, and it was a process, the rehearsal process. What I didn't realize then was, I think my brain really likes to explore. It's the detective thing. And in a rehearsal period, that's exactly what you're doing. And I think that process, as much as the actual performance, was what made me feel more together, because it was where I was. Have you heard the expression of being in flow?
I have,
yeah. Georgina's not. In fact, I have a book. Ta-da! Right there. I don't know if you can see that. By, wait for it, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Wow.
It's a difficult
you
name.
Said it.
Okay.
You said it, yeah.
But being in flow, so my husband's a rock climber. So for him, it would be when he's rock climbing. Okay. For other people, it could be all sorts of things, but it's that place where you're very present. And that's, I think, really what what switches it into something that feels so much better. So for instance, that self-consciousness thing. So I was working professionally also as a speaker, so an after dinner speaker, community circuit, not business. This was, and I hated the dinners and the socializing bit because I thought, oh, what am I going to talk about? Oh, it's small talk. I'm no good at that. Until one day I just clicked and I thought, okay, just ask questions. And it was so simple.
Yeah.
People love talking about themselves, what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And also they think you're the most brilliant conversationalist person in the world, even if you've only said a few words, because all they feel is that sense of being listened to, and people really value that.
Oh,
And also the detective bit of me would then pick up bits that I thought were really interesting, and I managed to take those and take it away from small talk into something that was more interesting, and therefore I became more involved in it. It's a little trick that I kind of learned, and yeah, I think it's a really useful one for everybody, to get away from being inside your head too much.
There's something so fascinating about the mentors who told you that acting would bear absolutely no place in being in business. And I think most people who are here tonight, most people who watch the replay who have been involved with me at all, will know that your background, your story, your uniqueness plays a massive part in your business and sales. I find that really fascinating. And for me as a customer, if I was a customer of yours and I knew you'd been an actor, I knew you had the skill set around acting, I knew that you could immerse yourself in the world of a character, the way that I always talk about immersing yourself in the world of the buyer, then I'd straight away be interested in you, and I would very likely buy from you, quite frankly. So, this is such a rich skill set to have in a business person and an entrepreneur. So I just wanted to say that because I just think it's really fascinating.
Thank you. The other lesson is don't just suck up everything that you're told by everyone. If it doesn't feel right, that's not to say that you dismiss every piece of input and advice. Of course you don't. I'm not arrogant enough to think I know everything, so I'm looking for sort of input. But my mistake was to just keep switching. But oh, that's what I have to do. Oh, right, okay, so that's what I have to do. And at every point I was just losing myself, so yeah. And I think that's a good lesson. And using what you've got, finding those links, isn't it, and realizing how relevant they can be. Some people think, well, I used to do this, that's not relevant to what I'm doing now, but we can always find a link.
Always. You know me and I know you, we can always find a link. So now I want to talk about a couple of other things. I do know something about you. I'm not sure whether you wanted to talk about it, but I'd like to, because I think, again, it links into everything about you as a person. But would you want to tell us about your celebrant?
Yeah. I think most people realize now there's virtually, is there anything I won't talk about? I'm fairly open. I just think something to do with being older, you just think, oh well, what the heck, so, but no, this is really interesting, and thank you for asking. So about 8 years ago, so I was at the time had what was called a portfolio career, which so I was doing some theatre work, some speaker work, and I was also a very interesting thing, and I did it for about 10 years freelance, doing reminiscence with people with dementia. So I was in and out of hundreds of care homes, which is the most, again, completely relevant to the stuff that I work with people on, because it's about trust, it's about storytelling, anyway. And then I also, but that wasn't enough. So I also trained as a celebrant, and really I did a few weddings, but really it became funeral celebrant. And that is, can you imagine the gift, if you like. This might sound a bit crass because obviously we're talking about somebody being in a terrible state of raw grief, but the gift of being able to walk into that stranger's house. It's been done a bit on Zoom and the phone recently, but generally, and help them get to the memories and the thoughts, or even in order, and I usually then write the words as well, so I'm then madly taking notes, listening, triggering, helping them to remember. I've got to have established a lot of trust in the, and I'm not being funny, but I'm walking into houses that are in areas that wouldn't naturally necessarily seem like I was from around there, if you get my drift. And that's quite an interesting challenge, because you have to, it's all about constantly open-minded, no judgments, no assumptions, open-minded, and making that person feel like you're not judging or anything the minute you walk through the door. So all of that has been a really interesting learning experience. And picking up clues, you're in someone's house and there might be a picture or something, and slowly, gradually helping them remember. Now, sometimes there aren't happy memories, but the fact that I've learned, that constantly reminded that every single life is different, every family has different dynamics. There's very rarely this perfect family thing going on. And that's, I think, an advantage, that I have had a few weird things going on in mine, because I feel, like I'm kind of slightly closer on the empathy sort of scale to some of that. When they start saying things like, well, it's a bit awkward talking about, well, our eldest son, well, he hasn't. And, I am able to say things like, look, honestly, I know where you're coming from. They don't need to know anymore. They just need to know I don't feel embarrassed, because we're all. And then the stories, just like with the people with dementia, triggering off all those fabulous stories, people's work lives, yes, some lives are very, very, very sad, because you think there's nothing there. But then a lot of lives, you just are amazed at the things people have done, and relationships and love and travel, and it's absolutely incredible. And then also the discipline of writing, so to come back and, a bit like we were saying, finding the themes and being able to weave it really into something that hopefully brings the essence of that person back in that process of delivering it. And so I've been around crematoriums, I've seen all the works, backstage, so to speak, which I quite like, because I'm the kind of person that would rather sort of know more rather than have those kind of things a bit mysterious. So lovely people, lovely funeral directors mainly.
Amazing gift, Tricia.
And
that, I think. And it actually brings me really nicely to your book, because you just talked about writing. We've just heard about your amazing story, your backstory, the things you've done, the acting, what do you call it? Reminiscence.
Yeah, reminiscence.
Dementia side.
Yeah, taking music, photos, objects, smells, you name it, to trigger off
memories.
Yeah,
fabulous.
Incredible.
And actually, I will put the link in of our podcast, Tricia, because we talked more about that when we podcast way back.
Yeah.
Actually, that was a lovely conversation. But with all of the things you've just told us about you, all of a sudden you write a book. Now, you see, the thing that we have in common is we've both written books. And when I went to start writing my book was about something completely different to what it ended up to be. So I'm curious, what was your book always going to be about when you first started to write it? What you ended up writing, or was it going to be something different?
Good question. I basically wrote more or less a full book about a year previous to this, and had it in a file on the shelf, and it was much more about imposter syndrome, and something didn't feel quite right, and I was still learning, and I was still getting clients and learning more and having more conversations, and also working out my own story a bit more. And then I realized that I did did want to go with that sort of area, but I wanted to do it with a slightly different perspective. And it was this idea, the first thing that came to mind was the thing I was, thing that took it from this angle where it's not so much all about the feeling like an imposter. It was more what I explained in the first part of our conversation about suppressing. My definition of self-squashing, as I call it, is suppressing your true passion, power, personality, for fear of being judged as a show off or unprofessional outsider. It's the suppression of the wonderfully powerful bit of you. And when we say power, you know what I mean? I'm not talking about power. Because it's closer to fear of success actually than fear of failure, if that makes sense. I think that will resonate. And people don't often talk about that because it feels like a weird thing to say. It even potentially feels like an arrogant thing to say if people, you know what I mean? And it's sort of, and I thought, no, I think this does need to be said, because the number of all the people that I've worked with and connected with are like amazing, you know, bright, fascinating, full of personality people. They're not actually squashed types of people. It's just that something in them is holding back, and that kind of people pleaser thing, and the just sort of, and I thought, and all that holding back's not doing us any good. There has to be a way of getting it out without it then going way over to the other extreme, where we're just obnoxious and controversial and shock jock and, you know, all that kind of stuff, which is a real turn off as far as I'm concerned. So, but how do you get that balance? How do you let that sort of more quirky you bit out, and the more, you know, excited, enthusiastic bit out, or whatever it is you? It might be the very quiet you. It might be the incredibly mysterious you. It might be the very strange you. I don't care. But how do you let that bit out without doing it in a way that's then over the top? And that's, I think, what I was trying to establish in these very real people that go to see Investigator Lewis.
So you've got this book you wrote, which was all about imposter syndrome, and then suddenly that now has been
ditched.
Yeah. Well, was it completely ditched, or did you?
Yeah, pretty much completely ditched. And do you know what I think it was? It didn't really have my.
By the way, sorry, that's my dishwasher.
Oh, your dishwasher? What's everybody doing with a dish? I'm going to go and play with my dishwasher.
Yeah, it's just gurgling, and I think people might think it's my stomach or something, and it's my dishwasher. Just so you know, sorry.
No. The book, it wasn't my voice. It wasn't really my voice. And Catherine will know. Catherine, the designer of this book, fabulous, will know. She also works with Helen Pollock, and who the previous time I hadn't worked with anybody. I hadn't gone anywhere near a book coach. It hadn't even occurred to me. So that also made a big difference, realizing, oh, there's this person who, okay. So what she did was because she knew me because of LinkedIn. So she had a sense of my personality, if you like, and she encouraged me to absolutely not go half-arsed with it. I was just going to put the investigator in as a sort of block after each chapter or something like that, something. I said, what? I said, what? I said, well, I can't make the whole. She said, you can. She said, do it, she kept saying. So I would tentatively send her the first kind of chapter, and I said, really? Yes. She said, yes. I said, well, the whole thing, and then I could, yeah. So it was great, because when you're writing, when you're really actually, because it's quite a discipline, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So when you start enjoying it, I think that's a bit of a clue.
Well, guess what happens? You're in flow, Trisha. You're in flow.
Exactly. And it's the actor in me, of course, is probably more. I mean, I've written loads of short plays and loads of one-woman shows.
Yes.
So I'm probably more practiced at writing dialogue as a, you know, in a way, and that's sort of what I've done in a way in this book.
Yeah, I love
So
it.
it's just finding your thing, isn't it?
Well, it is. And, you know, we've talked a lot about how unique we all are. And I think that's very much what is happening in the book. And I know I haven't really set upon reading it properly yet, but just listening to what people are saying and your story as to how you've put it together. And I see that these are like almost cases, aren't they? Individual cases. I know that there's probably not a book I've ever seen that's written like that. And if there is somewhere, it won't be the same anyway. But I just felt like it was very unique the way you'd actually done it. So I'm quite.
And you know, that's really an important observation for everything, you know, because you know that sales and me is like it's not, it's not anyway, your kind of selling is lovely. It's lovely. But I think it's knowing that I was going to make a really profound comment there. Oh God, what was it? It's that oh God, it was there. It was so profound, this comment about sales. Oh God. Oh, I know, difference. That's right. So as a coach, and this will apply to other areas, other genres of business as well, you are constantly seeing other coaches everywhere. Not only that, but plenty of them with a similar message, okay? Because it's a human thing, usually we're talking about, so why wouldn't there be hundreds of other people with that message? And then what happens is comparisonitis sets in. So you're thinking, there's probably no point in me talking about that anymore because they're talking about it and they're much more famous than me, and they've got thousands of followers and a flashy website. So I might as well give up, you know. And then you have to remind yourself exactly what you just said. We're all different. We all have our own story. We all have our own energy. We all have our own style, etc. And guess what? We couldn't all actually work with 30 million people at once. So it was a good thing that there's quite a few of us and that people will naturally be drawn to you. But the thing you do have to do, and I don't know why I'm saying this because this is totally what you would say, is that you do have to be your proper, unique human self where you appear so that people know whether they're going to be drawn to you. Otherwise, guess what? They will just maybe go to the flashiest website and regret it.
It's so true, Trisha. So look, I've asked you a lot of questions myself, but I'd like to just see if anyone else has got any questions for you so that we can at least open it up to see if anyone else has got any burning questions to ask. So guys, Georgina, surely you've got a question because you've always got a question. And Tina certainly has. Look, she's already unmuted. Tina has. Come on, Tina. Come on.
My question, I'm reading your book, Trisha, I'm halfway through, so I'm only through, I think I'm on case 3. But what would you say are if you had to give kind of 2 or 3 top tips for being your best unsquashed self, what would they be?
Nice, Tina. Okay.
Flicks hair.
I flick my hair at this because I'm worth it. No, yeah, that's my top tip. Go around flicking your hair. That's number one. No, I think it's very important not to think of yourself as being this one fixed concrete thing. I think that's like a big thing. And I hope I always, in my messaging, I'm getting that across, because I am not saying, oh, just be you, okay? Because that would be really unhelpful. We started talking about alter egos. I actually firmly believe that it's very helpful to be able to pull on a number of yous for different circumstances. So what the common theme, to answer sort of your question, Tina, is being present, curious, and conscious about the bringing in of your various tweaked selves. Because as long as you're doing it consciously, because of the context, then good, thumbs up. The problem arises when you are doing it in order to please, or because you think you should be like this, or you don't have the confidence to come out with the that's when it's squashed. But being unsquashed doesn't mean, oh, I'm just going to be me. Okay. It means I am consciously happy to own and reveal elements of me and tweak this here and tweak that there. And yeah, that feels good. And then I can come back and I can put my feet up at the end of the day and I can be that me, you know, that's all good. And there's nothing fake about that. So I think that's a real top tip. And I think one of my favorite words is curiosity. And I think the more curious you are, the more you are out of your own head, the more present you are, the less squashed you are. That's kind of a very quick tip. It's not a kind of rocket sciencey thing, but it's something that as humans we find so hard to do because we're bombarded by noise and musts and shoulds and labels and baggage that just kind of pull us into this place. And before we know it, we're in one of those weird little spirals and we're going down. And I still do it. I still go down, but I know how to climb up quicker. So, yeah.
And that kind of curiosity piece, because obviously, you know, as business owners, and I think about it does come into my head often in terms of, you know, oh, I'm not good enough. It, you know, these kind of self-doubting things. Or when you say the curiosity, is it kind of, from your perspective, being curious about the external world versus being curious internally? Does that make sense?
So it makes complete sense. And of course, one of the things that's happened as we've evolved has meant that we do spend way too much time inside our own heads trying to work out the meaning of life and the universe. And we're not really meant to, ideally, we should just be going and, you know, plowing a few fields and making sure we've got enough wood for the fire to keep us warm overnight. But because we've developed into this slightly overpopulated world and things are generally much easier, we do have this extra capacity to be able to go running around inside our own heads, which there is a big difference between boosting your self-awareness, but you've got to do it with a sense of, and therefore I will do, rather than so I'm like this, I'm not like that. But it's things like, that's a trigger. This is a good one. Spot your, what I call squasher triggers. So almost journal this, almost make a note of, bloody hell, sorry, I swore. Every time I'm in that situation, every time I'm around that person, every time I look at that person's website or post, I go into this odd place of make a note and say, right, okay, well, what the heck is going on there? And then get like curious. So that is curious about you, but it's almost bringing it outside of you at the same time. Does that make sense? Please tell me that makes sense, Tina.
Yes, it does. I mean, you know, it's I totally agree, because I think from my solution, if you like, is proactively taking action. So, you know, it's that kind of taking action, it's going forward, so yeah, it does. So thank you for that.
So in the book, every chapter has it's full of action. It's full of action. And yeah, Georgina's nodding. Yeah, definitely. I didn't want to write a book that was just, I bring in the kind of geeky stuff, because so to me, the way the book is how it helps us to unsquash, which is one, the self-awareness bit. So the story is there to show how something plays out in real life. Okay, so damn, yeah, that's what I do. Okay, that's fine. So that is an important part of it, followed up by the slightly geeky stuff. What is it that drives these human behaviors? Why, you know, what is there? Some research done on that, and that makes you realize that we're not alone. We're human. Our brains function in certain ways, etc., etc. So now we've got the knowledge piece, and then right, okay, I'm going to deconstruct this a bit, and I'm going to take 1, 2, 3. I'm going to try that this week. I'm going to react differently when that happens and see what. Yeah, so it's the action.
I love this, how you've put it together, Trisha. I really like that. I think that's another unique part of it. Sorry.
I really liked Professor P. That just appeals to me, as far as I do like the facts and then sort of de-picking it as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What question?
That was going to be my question. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it. If you got a question, yeah.
Well, where did Professor P come from? I mean, I absolutely love her. I love the name dropping as well that she does. And,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, I think it's another alter ego. I think that I am definitely a slightly frustrated forensic psychologist, and if I could retrain, I think I'd be going into that kind of line of stuff. I watch just about every kind of forensic-y, detective-y thing that's going, really, and think, yeah, I want to be. So I think that was part of it. She was the part of me that went to university and studied communication and did all the psychology stuff behind it and the research. I wanted to bring that in, and I wanted it to be a character. And then I also I just wanted to have fun with the relationship between her and Investigator Lewis. There's something slightly androgynous about both of them, which I think is also one of my alter egos. I did a one-woman play once about Virginia Woolf, and I quite got into that. And so I just think, yeah, there is a lot of bits of me in it, but it was also a really good vehicle to bring in the geeky stuff without suddenly changing style and suddenly just doing a whole sort of academic bit. And the name dropping thing, I just thought, well, yes, it would just be funny that she knew all these people. And I literally, actually, okay, when you're writing a book, there is a point where it actually does write it itself, doesn't it? So in a way, this character I visualized, I could see her, I could see her consulting rooms, I could see the investigators' dusty old offices. I actually could see the streets that were walked between the two. I could see the cat. And that to me was the closest I was getting to theatre. And bearing in mind, I did it through lockdown. What a lifesaver, to be honest, because I would have done at least one or two bits of theatre stuff during the year. So this was almost like creating a stage and having these characters come on. So in a way, they partly began to write themselves, especially the cat.
Yeah. Brilliant character, Puffy.
Love that. Georgina, have you got any questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned about fear of success.
Yeah.
I have a number of theories, like I always do, and I haven't read all your cases yet, so you may mention it. But one of mine is, I don't feel we celebrate success like you're saying about this squashing down, and it's just ways that you now celebrate. So, how do you celebrate your successes now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You're so right. It is, and I don't want to bring. Have we got any men here?
Yes, we've got Thomas lurking somewhere.
Thomas is lurking. Thomas is lurking. That's not good enough, Thomas, because I'm interested. Obviously, I wrote this book kind of I sort of said at the beginning, if you're a Sam and not a Samantha, you'll still get a lot out of this book. But I did sort of have to slightly target it, so all the characters are female. But I think fear of success, is it more of a female thing? If it is that because I was brought up in the 50s and it was still very, very, very weird to be successful as a woman. You were out of the ordinary, and as humans we are wired, this is the weird confliction. We're wired for conformity to a certain extent because we don't want to be thrown out of the tribe into the wilderness and starve, okay? But we're also keen to be autonomous. And so there is this, and this actually is the subject. I am doing a TEDx talk. It was meant to be this year, but because of everything, it's now next year. And this is sort of at the nub of what I'm trying to get to in this talk, is about this kind of what I call conflicted conformity. And there is this kind of battleground, I think, set up where standing up, high, saying, here I am successful, does feel a bit like, now I'm going to be shot down as a show off, as, you know, who does she think she is? And as kids, we were kind of, as girls, taught not to show off. You know, the kid at school who was the clever one, not always the most popular, you know, teacher's pet. There are so many messages, I think, when we're growing up, and from history and society still, oh, you know, bitchy cow woman, bossy. Now this is where I bring my alter ego in. So the other day, I'm gone slightly off track here, but I think that's a lot to do with our fear of success. And I, the other day, had a client meeting, and I've just taken on a project, which is quite interesting because it's two blokes. Okay, most of my clients are females. One of them is it's a firm of accountants, for goodness sakes. You couldn't get more kind of out of my, anyway. So I had a Zoom call with two blokes, and it was meant to be just a very quick call for one of them to introduce me to the other guy prior to us starting the project. And the first step of the project was a brainstorming session, but that is part of the package and part of being paid for. And this other guy starts asking me a lot of questions. And I thought to myself, and you'd be so proud of me, Jules. I thought, hang on a minute. I'm not going to answer all these questions because I haven't been paid yet. You know, I want this signed on the dotted line. And this is step number one of the project. So I said something. I said, oh, no, I'm not answering that. I said, because that will come up in step one of the actual strategy that we're laying out. And I said it quite bossy. And I thought afterwards, you know, typical woman, oh God, did that sound too bossy? So then I brought in a humor, which is, if you like, a sort of alter ego, and B, an actual alter ego as a sort of joke. So I said something like, by the way, let's call him John. I felt like I brought my inner headmistress into the room at that point. Was I a little bit stroppy? And he said, no, honestly, no, it's fine. No, you were quite right to say, and everything was great. But so I think there were two sides to that. One, it was me trying to make sure that everyone there was okay and that I hadn't alienated anybody by being a little bit, geez, I mean, a little bit. I mean, if I was a bloke, I don't even think I would have considered this. And B, it made me feel good because I thought, well, I have been assertive with my headmistress, businesswoman, but I've also brought in these other characters to just kind of make sure that the what I call the strong, warm balance has been beautifully upheld. Okay, so there's a bit of conscious playing around with a couple of sort of alter egos there. Does that make any sense?
It does.
Did that answer your question for 1 minute, Georgina?
I'd still like to know how you celebrate success.
How I celebrate it it's interesting because I've almost avoided answering that question, haven't I? Which is probably deeply psychological.
Georgina noted that, I think.
I am, I think, still a little, I'm not maybe brilliant as it. I mean, I've sort of, the posts I've done on LinkedIn, it's humor, isn't it? That's what I actually do, soften the whole thing with humor. And it's possibly something I still have to work on myself, because I think I am finding ways of being careful about overusing the humor. Somebody said to me not that long ago, I said something about something quite deep, and they said, oh, it's funny because I never really thought of you like that, Trisha. I said, oh, how did you think of me? This, you just see my post on LinkedIn. Oh, funny, witty, musing, lovely, warm, but not a deep thinker. And I was like horrified. I said, oh my God, you can't get much deeper thinker than me. I'm deep thinking left, right, and center. I never stop deep thinking. And it's interesting because she then actually responded to a post I put on a couple of days later, and she clearly clicked. But I thought, well, that's not totally her fault, because it's more than likely that I've slightly overplayed the humor in order to soften the headmistress.
Yeah.
Because I went out actually and saw my husband after that meeting, and I said, oh, that felt good. That felt good. He was laughing. I said, yeah, I thought, I'm not really as nice as people think I am. Now, this is interesting because somebody actually said this to me in a client call the other day. They actually said these words: I'm not as nice as people think I am. And this is a really lovely person, by the way. And I'm a really lovely person. But this is what we do. We sort of, and if you're not careful, that sets up a bit of a pressure cooker. And one day, if you don't keep trying to balance this out, what you end up with is a fight, and that's where you do things like go out and slam doors or just tell somebody to F off because this volcano has erupted because you were sort of being a bit too nice. And then you just get, I've done it in shops with people. I've got really stroppy with shopkeepers. So I think, oh God, if anybody on LinkedIn could see me now, they'd think, oh, that's nice.
It's me if I'm onto the customer complaints, if I'm complaining about something and I give them absolute hell. And then I think, I'm so glad no one's seen me do that because they wouldn't think it was me, but
you see? Yeah. I think this is something that is really, it's a really good question, Georgina. And I think it's something we need to do a bit more unwrapping on, Jules, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I'm kind of sitting here thinking, how do I celebrate success? And actually the first thing I came up with was I do it empathetically. Now, I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but I almost do it from this humble place.
Yes.
Where I actually want to say, I'm really proud of myself for this. Yes. I've loved doing this, and I'm so happy that this was successful. And it's almost that an empathetic way. So I'm not going, look at me, look how good I was fabulous. But then that would be showy offy. Whereas I do it from this place of, I'm really pleased and proud of myself for coming this far. And so I would describe it as an empathetic way of celebrating.
Yes, that makes complete sense.
But yet again, we're squashing that. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
That's what we want to do, is go yes, like
yes,
and really celebrate it, because I am super competitive, so I would be on the ceiling shouting and screaming when I do well.
Yeah, but I mean, go back to school days, go back to, we just over and over again, the person that keeps putting their hand up because they know the answer, clever clogs, oh geez, it's just forever, and then when I first started working, it was, like I say, it was in the thinking 70s and 80s, and women were just, I'm sorry, but we were really just meant to look nice, I remember sitting around a table at a meeting and desperately thinking I had something really good to offer in that meeting, and I think I ended up going and getting another bottle of Perrier water or something.
Trisha, we could talk to you all night.
Yes.
I'm really aware of the fact that we've been on pretty much an hour already. It's gone so quick. I don't know if there's any other questions from the guys here, but I've just got probably one last question. Because although I haven't read the book yet, I would just love to know what your favourite case is. Because then when I do read the book, I can know that this was your favourite one. Do you have one?
Do you know what? I do actually quite equally like them, but I am particularly keen on template torture. Template torture, which is chapter number 4, which the story is based around a networking event, and because I was so there when I was in the body of the particular character. So and I know, because I actually read an extract on Stefano's podcast. And
lovely,
and a number of people resonated. I think the minute you go into a networking story, most people in some way are going to resonate. And there's a very funny line about one of the things that she felt, why she felt weird and wrong and useless afterwards. There's a list that she's written, and the last thing on the list is, and I felt like a man in drag, and which is a very odd thing to say, but it gets unwrapped even further by Professor P. But but that line does come directly from the author's experience of trying to wear the kind of dresses that I thought business women were supposed to. And honestly, the minute I put a dress on, and I felt like a man in drag. Yeah.
It's so interesting. Trisha, I actually really can't wait to read your book now. But before you go, would you also just tell everybody, apart from being an amazing author, what else do you help people with, so that we can at least have a little breakdown of how you help in your business life?
Yes. And I don't think I always make this particularly clear. Who'd have thought? I do genuinely help people, and the core of it is the way I coach is partly based in my experience, obviously, as an actor, because I understand the value of trying to bring things to life. So if somebody comes to me because they are getting tongue-tied trying to answer the simple question of what do you do at a networking event, we can unwrap that, but I will role play it with them. But it always works so well. When I say role play, I don't get them to take on other people. It's me that, because I'm an actor, I take on maybe their boss, maybe this awkward client, maybe the audience. It doesn't really matter, but we bring it to life. But in the process of all of this, we unpack a lot of baggage that is not in a sort of deep, get on the couch, let's spend hours talking about your life, but in quite a practical way. Interesting that you've kept repeating that word. I've got a feeling that might be partly the association you've got, which is why you've got a barrier with X, Y, Z. So there is forensics going on. And the end product is people either getting to do a video, which they thought they'd never do, getting to stand up and talk in public, which they thought they'd never do, maybe getting to host a podcast, or maybe just knowing what they want to write about and get out there in their content with their voice in it rather than somebody else's voice. And just generally, it can be quite technical. I mean, we can work creating a signature talk all the way through to rehearsing and delivering it, or it can just be getting beyond the point of I hate networking, or I hate doing videos, or just simply, well, what is my thing? What is my thing? Because I think I've lost it, and I'm just I just sound like everybody else now. So it's usually one-to-one. I do a little bit of training with a couple of companies, and I recently coached somebody on their wedding speech. So I'm quite
amazing.
flexible.
I love that. I mean, there's so much versatility there, Trisha, really, with all your experience, but I really love the outcomes you can give people. It does make real life changing difference, actually, doing this work, doesn't it? In terms
it can even affect people's relationships. Actually, I have had a few cases where people have said, oh my God, I had a conversation with my partner on the back of what we were talking about, because I never realized that was this thing that I do, you know, and he said, well, yeah, you do, and we got it out in the open and it all made sense. And
amazing.
There are a few people, of course, with my marriage history that I'd be wanting to go around saying, could you just leave your husband?
Yeah.
I think everything will be fine if you just leave your husband. I don't say that.
No. Because I mean, I'm just as bad as you, aren't I? I'm not either. So, you know, life skills are sales skills is what I always say, and life skills are business skills. You know? And this is the beauty of all of this, isn't it? So, oh my goodness, what an amazing conversation, Trisha. It's been so lovely. Anyone else got any last minute questions? Because we don't have to leave this second, but I just want to make sure that you've asked Trisha anything you want to ask her.
It's more just vouching for her skill as a communication coach, because I was one of those, oh God, video. No, I can't. But I did, thanks to Trisha.
Yeah, you did. You were a very good student.
Amazing, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
There's been such a difference, Catherine, in your journey as well. In so many ways, you're so much more confident now, and it's just beautiful to see. Because you were on my podcast quite some time ago again, weren't you?
Yeah, it
Just,
was quite
just
a
the way, and that was brilliant, by the way. But it's like I even see now you speak more confidently, and you're more comfortable. You're more comfortable doing it, which is so nice to see.
You see, comfortable's a nice word, Jules, and yet I
Nice
think it's got a
word.
bad reputation. Comfortable, don't you?
I think it has got a bad reputation, but I think comfortable says everything about you showing up as real you. Personally, so yeah, and the thing about words is there's always going to be words that trigger people. I love the word authentic. Most people bloody hate it because it's been overused, but when you look at the meaning of these words,
Exactly.
that's where the beauty lies, isn't it? So but honestly, Trisha, I knew I'd love it. I absolutely can't wait for us to have finished reading your book and tell you what we all think about it. And I'll make sure you get the video from that session of our book club.
Fabulous.
Because I think that would be nice for you to see what we all say.
It'd be great.
Yeah, even though we know it's being videoed, we'll be honest.
I love honesty. No, I do. No, please be honest. Please be honest. And I can't wait for another walk down the beach at Bournemouth with you.
Oh, me too, so much.
And anyone else who wants to visit.
Go and see Trisha in Bournemouth. But can you also just tell us where we can get the book before we go? It is in our bookstore it's membership, by the way, which takes us to Amazon.
Fantastic. It's I mean, you can go to trishalewis.com and book on the menu, and all the link, the Amazon link is there, and there's quite a lot of interesting background stuff on the book on my website. So there's insights into the characters and the inspiration and all the stuff. But if you want to just go straight to Amazon, there it is, The Mystery of the Squashed Self, Kindle or paperback. I would just like to say that it will be in other places after a couple of months. There's this it's a bit like estate agents. So as soon as we've gone past the 3-month stage, it will be in more indie type places, which will please me, because we don't want to be completely ruled by the zone, as it's sometimes called. But on the other hand, got 2 parcels at least today from Amazon, so what can you do?
No, that's real, isn't it? That's real. Sorry, one last question, I've just thought of it. Audiobook.
Well, do you know, I think, what do you think? I think I should
do it.
Yeah, I think I've got to do it.
And you've got to read it.
Especially with those
too right, I've got to read it. You don't think I'm going to let anyone else get that?
I didn't think you would, but there are people who get other people to read their books, and I just think no, read your own book. That's amazing.
I will do it. I fortunately know someone with a little studio who I think I did get a quote from someone who's really, really good and all the rest of it, but I thought, geez, because it costs quite a bit to get a book out there, and so I'm saving a few pennies up, and then I will definitely do it. Yeah.
And I did mine I got a studio and a guy who could edit as I did it, but it was really low cost because of how I did it, because it was a local studio, and then I was just paying him an hourly rate, and I managed to read a 4-hour book in 6 hours, which was
definitely
your experience. So amazing. Love it, Trisha. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for joining us tonight live. I hope you enjoyed it all, and I know we're going to see more of Trisha for sure, but thank you, and I hope you got as much.
I've been staring at myself all evening because of that picture behind you. It's freaking me out. I feel like going like this to mirror
it was a reflection when she first came on. It was quite funny.
I thought, that's not me, I'm not wearing that.
We're not moving.
Have a good rest of the evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Jules. It's always, of course, a delight. It just feels like it's the closest thing to being in a pub or something over a glass of wine and having a chat. Can't wait for that, but it's pretty close.
It's very lovely of you to join us. We really appreciate it, Trisha.
Thanks, Trisha.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lovely people. Nice to meet you, Georgina. Bye, Thomas.
Bye, Thomas.